Folks, thousands of people across America are in local and state jails. Why? Because they cannot afford bail. There's been an effort across America to reduce this, to actually stop imprisoning people who are sitting in jail. Remember, Sandra Bland was sitting in a Texas jail. She was arrested in Prairie View, Texas. She could not make the bail, around $500, and she died in jail for $500. And so this effort to get rid of cash bail has been happening all across the country. Now, what's also been happening is the folks on the right have been claiming, oh, this is the reason why we have high crime. And so in Harris County, Texas, you had the police union supporting former prosecutors running against judges who supported ending cash bail in Harris County. Several of those progressive judges lost in the primary. You had the attacks on Alvin Bragg, the DA in Manhattan. The same thing happening in other places. Now the attacks are moving to Illinois, where they're calling this, oh, the Purge bill. Well, it's actually, that's not the case. So Illinois has passed the Safety Act. Now, again, it lays out in a very strong way exactly what this means, yet for two. But what's happening, though, is you've got tons of misinformation that is going on. Folks are on social media trying to debunk it, but we know what happens when the right takes that lie and begins to amplify it. It goes on and on and on. Here is one of those efforts to try to keep the lies at bay.
Listen to me. It cannot be understated how significant of a role the media plays in quashing progressive movements and keeping more Black people in jail. And it's frustrating because every time we say the criminal system isn't broken, it's working as intended, these are the outlets and institutions that respond, no, we still need to have faith in the system. We need reform, we need reform, we need reform. But then every time we actually get substantive progressive reform, here they go with campaigns like this filled with lies. And please trust that it's not a coincidence that they're going to places like the Shade Room and Baller Alert with Black audiences to peddle these lies, because what they want is for Black people to internalize propaganda and lies so that we don't support progressive initiatives that are designed to keep us out of jail. So I'm going to dispel these myths about the Purge law, because there is no Purge law. All there is a concerted effort by media, right-wing Republicans, and neoliberals to keep Black people in jail. You've probably heard about Rikers, because Rikers is infamous. But less people realize that Rikers is a pre-trial detention center, meaning the people incarcerated at Rikers have not been convicted of a crime. Last year, 16 people died in Rikers. This year, 13 people died in Rikers, and Rikers has already been declared a human rights crisis. So what if I told you that the crisis happening at Cook County Jail was worse? Cook County Jail is the pre-trial detention center in Chicago, Illinois, meaning the people incarcerated at Cook County Jail have not been convicted of a crime. They simply just don't have the money for bail. And that's an important point people need to understand about bail. Bail is not about public safety. Bail is about whether or not you can afford your freedom, period. I am a public defender who represents people that are incarcerated at Rikers, where people are killed, people are beaten, people are sexually assaulted, people spend years of their life. And I'm telling you that I was floored to find out that there are people sitting in Cook County Jail waiting on a trial for 4 years, 8 years, even 11 years. So let me tell you about what the Chicago Public Safety Act would do. The first lie being circulated is that this bail reform will prevent police from being able to make arrests. False. Not only can police arrest whoever they want, like they've always been able to, all the bail reform law does is encourage them not to make completely low-level arrests that they could write tickets for. And you wanna know what else? You wanna know what else? A law enforcement agency proposed that language. What the Public Safety Act would take low-level crimes, low-level misdemeanors, non-violent crimes, and instead of those being bail eligible, where you sit in jail because you don't have the money, you fight your case from the outside, because now judges cannot set bail and keep you incarcerated for something they probably otherwise would not have been able to. What this Public Safety Act would do is it would get rid of the cash bail system. It doesn't mean that nobody goes to jail pre-trial. It means that instead of whether or not you're free or you're in jail being determined based on how much money you have, instead, prosecutors would have 3 different options that they could keep you detained should they so choose. Prosecutors will have an option to present evidence to the judge showing that you are a threat to public safety, or that you have engaged in some kind of willful flight from prosecution, or if you're simply charged with most felonies and they can have you detained pre-trial. The reality is that the vast majority of people in our criminal system are living well beneath the poverty line. They're represented by public defenders because they cannot afford representation, which is a fact. The court, the same court that will then place high bail on them, they know they can't afford it. So it's a tactic by which we put poor people in jail for things we probably couldn't prove at a trial. They'll probably never have a trial. It's a way to coerce them into plea deals. But it is not about public safety, because at the end of the day, if you have the money, you can buy your freedom. So what this act does is it gets rid of that component, and it actually makes it about dangerousness. It makes it about whether or not the prosecutor has some evidence that he can present to justify detaining you pretrial, rather than just using and exercising your own wealth or lack thereof against you. Listen to me. Do not fall for the propaganda. They're calling it the Purge law because they want you to believe that a law designed at affording you more rights, at preventing you from being railroaded, at preventing more deaths from mounting inside a Cook County jail is not there to help you. It's a lie. This has nothing to do with public safety. Listen, we allegedly live in a civil society with a presumption of innocence where people should not die awaiting their trial for crimes they have not been convicted of. That shouldn't be what's happening, but that is what's happening each and every day inside this country at pretrial detention centers all around this country. But Cook County Jail and the pretrial detention centers in Chicago and in Illinois are some of the worst. This law is meant to help us. Do not mind the propaganda.
Sister there, Olayami, she's actually a public defender in the state of New York. Joining us right now, folks, are two Illinois lawmakers who are very much involved with this particular bill. Joining us right now on Roland Martin Unfiltered, Illinois State Senator Elgie Sims and Illinois State Representative Cam Buckner. Glad to have both of you here. Cam was also running for Chicago mayor. So, Senator Sims, again, folks have been labeling this, y'all just going to be just releasing criminals left and right. They're going to be fleeing Illinois state prisons. This was a well thought out, well crafted bill that the right now is trying to demonize in order to brand Democrats as soft on crime.
Absolutely, Roland. And they try to act as if they didn't have a seat at the table, and as if they weren't participating in these discussions. We had over 9 public hearings, 30 hours of public testimony about the issues included in the Safety Act. And Safety Act, which stands for, coincidentally, safety for our communities, accountability for law enforcement, and fairness and equity in the criminal justice system today. But that's what the lies that are being told is that somehow the doors to the courthouse are going to be open. That's just not the case. Clearly, and what we have heard from prosecutors and from Republican operatives around the state is they've taken one part of a sentence, not even reading the entire sentence, but one part of a sentence and said, well, this shows that they're going to let people out of jail. The entirety of the law says that if you are a threat to public safety or you're a flight risk, you are going to be held. Sister Alurin did an amazing job of outlining the issues that are included in this bill and why these are not just misdirections or misinformation. They're downright patently false lies. These individuals are trying to play politics, and it is the worst form of dog whistle politics in its worst. And they're trying to they're trying to fearmonger individuals and scare them into believing something that's just not true. Republicans have shown themselves that they don't have ideas. They can only play on fear. They can't debate on policy. They can't engage on policy. They can only engage in fear tactics and misdirections and misinformation. And that's exactly what this is all about.
Representative Buckner, there have been stories coming out of New York City. They're saying, oh, these people being let out of prison, they get out, they commit more crimes. They're blaming the judges. They're blaming the DA. As I said in my open, this happened in Harris County, where you had the police union actually financing prosecutors who ran against judges who were in support of getting rid of cash bail. And so this is a consistent attack that we're seeing where police unions are aligning with hard-line right-wing prosecutors to get rid of these type of bills and these type of laws.
That's right, Roland. This is a consistent, as you said, and concerted effort the folks here in Illinois who are peddling this nonsense, who are peddling these lies, are folks who have very clearly been aligned with the Tea Party Patriot Act and had some say-so in the planning of the insurrection on January 6th in Washington, D.C. We know where these people stand on the spectrum. But the truth of the matter, as Senator Sims said, is that we've got to be able to beat back these false narratives because we are aggressively attacking a system that didn't work for the people who we represent. And we know that when you aggressively attack systemic racism, it will always try to fight you back. That's where we are right now. But it's important for us to get the word out to let people know that this does not make us less safe. This makes the people in Illinois safer. And we have really attacked a system that treats you better if you're guilty and you're wealthy than it does if you're innocent and you're insolvent.
So how many people are we talking about who are going to be impacted by this, Senator Sims?
Every new charge would have someone will have to go through the determination of whether or not their crime fits within these categories. As you've alluded to on a couple of different occasions, the Texas effort. The Texas effort showed that there was no increase in crime. Representative Buckner just mentioned the reason we started this effort was we are seeing, and as again Sister Laura mentioned in her comments, the recommendation to do what we have done came from a task force which I sat on that was spearheaded by the Illinois judiciary that talks about, and it found that after 3 days incarcerated, and when you are detained on a pretrial basis, after 3 days, your life starts to unravel. You've lost your home. You've lost your job. There's an impact, and sometimes irreparably, on your family. So the efforts that we're taking are to make sure that we keep low-level offenders out of the criminal justice system, but then there is a determination made about someone's threat to public safety and whether or not they're willful flight risk. That one of the memes that's going around suggests that second-degree murderers or kidnappers won't be held in custody. Again, as a scurrilous lie that plays on the worst fears that individuals have. But what we're trying to do is make communities more safe by engaging in stripping systemic racism from the criminal justice system. We don't really have a criminal justice system. We have a criminal legal system. And right now, that criminal legal system is not acting on behalf of all of its participants. So that's why we have to have a system. That's why we focus on equity, fairness and equity in this criminal justice system, so we can have truly justice, not just a criminal legal system.
Representative Buckner, isn't it also a fact, the bottom line is you're spending a ton of money having people in jails, and so if they're low-level offenders and don't have to be sitting in a jail, isn't that saving taxpayers money?
It is, Roland. We spend more money on incarcerating people in this country, in this state, than we do on educating them or feeding them or housing them or clothing them. We're talking about a purely economic argument here. This is good for municipalities. We are making sure that we don't tax just people who don't need to be here. You talked at the open about Sandra Bland, who died in your home state of Texas, who was an Illinois native. We talk about Cleve Browder. We can talk about a number of folks around this country who have found themselves with petty crimes, incarcerated, and then they don't make it out. This is not okay. This is not in line with the humanity we should have as we move forward. And once again, this law will do the right thing to make us all safe and to make our criminal legal system push further towards justice.
All right. I want to thank both of you for joining us, Representative Senator Elgie Sims, Representative Cam Buckner. We certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Roland.
I'm going to bring in my panel, Dr. Mustafa Santiago Ali, a former senior advisor for environmental justice at the EPA, Breonna Cartwright, political strategist, Demario Solomon Simmons, civil rights attorney and founder of Justice for Greenwood. Demario, I'll start with you. I mean, the thing that we're dealing with here is you're dealing with individuals who are on the right, who absolutely believe in throw them in jail, throw the key away, we don't care, give them years and years and years, when in fact, it's also red states that realized they were going broke by doing this. Kansas was one of the first states that realized we can't keep imprisoning people. You've had other states, that red states, that people like, you just can't keep this. And then the problem is you got people like Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas, and I'm looking for the tweets where he literally said, the problem is not over incarceration. This fool actually said, we're not putting enough people in prison. That's how sick and demented these so-called Jesus-loving white conservative Christians are.
Well, you shouldn't be surprised, because it was the first slave ship that brought enslaved Africans over to America was named the Jesus. So this has been a long tradition of white supremacists utilizing their religion to oppress and subjugate black people. You also have to remember, Roland, and I know you know this, the 13th Amendment, as we all know, outlawed enslavement in America in the first part of it. But the second part says, unless you are convicted of a felony. And they have utilized that since the ending of slavery in 1866 to continue to have chain gangs, put us in jail and do convict leasing. And now they have private prisons. And this is why it's so dangerous. When they talk about these prisons, school to prison pipeline, and the kind of re-upping of the crime bill of 1994, kind of 2.0, with the president talking about more police officers and more law enforcement. What that means for us as black people is more imprisonment. And with these private prisons, people are making millions and billions of dollars off us being actually in prison. So yes, the states may be going broke by imprisoning folks, but there are private, wealthy corporations and individuals that are making millions of dollars. This is dangerous. We must continue to fight against it. I applaud the two brothers that you had on that's pushing this particular bill. This needs to happen all over the place. And one last thing I would say, pre-trial detention here in Oklahoma City, we had 13 inmates die in Oklahoma County Jail. I've sued the Oklahoma County Jail for inmates dying there. This is an epidemic that happens all across this country, and people are in jail without actually being convicted of a crime. They're usually there because they cannot afford the bail. That's why bail reform is important. That's why we need to have criminal justice reform, and we do not need more officers or more prisons.
Brianna, this is the tweet from Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas. We don't have an over-incarceration problem. We have an under-incarceration problem. That shows you just how stupid and sick this man is. In fact, he then went on to say this this is going to this whole issue. Democrats cause this crime wave by eliminating cash bail, electing Soros prosecutors, and giving early release to violent criminals. And what's their solution? To take away your right to own a gun to protect yourself. This is the same guy who opposed the First Step Act because he didn't want people getting out of prison. He believes that if you get sentenced to 20 years, you should serve all 20 years. These folks, but they call themselves fiscal conservatives, but they love to spend money on cops and love to spend money on prisons as opposed to reform.
Yes, unfortunately, they forgot that we call it a rehabilitation system. And so we should be focusing on wanting people to be productive members of society, being able to have jobs, give back, pay taxes. And so having them to say we have an under incarcerated problem is just baloney, just to keep it simple, because we want more people outside than inside. So I don't understand the fact that we would go to seek random people or keep people in longer. And that's the reason why we have issues with our our public trust with prisons.
It is just mind-boggling to listen to these people, Mustafa, as if they have any credibility on this when states like Arkansas, these people are going broke. They're going broke when it comes to throwing people in prison. And it's a bunch of folks that ain't got no business being in no damn jails. They know it and we know it.
Yeah, I mean, Senator Cotton, he has access, to all kinds of information. So just in case he don't know the facts, let me break them down for him. We've got about 2 million folks every night in our country who are incarcerated in jails and prisons and other ways that they've, captured folks, especially folks dealing with border issues. We got 400,000 people who are in pretrial detention. So all he has to do is go over to prisonpolicy.org and he can see the facts that are there, and it's broken down about how all these types of individuals are dealing with these situations where, they haven't been convicted of a crime, but yet they are dealing with this pretrial, detention situations that are currently going on. We know that in our country, you get as much justice as you can afford. So if we want to actually begin to balance out this legal system, address some of the things that Mario has been talking about, then that means that we got to get rid of the cash bail, because we understand the wealth gap that exists inside of our country. We understand the hard decisions that families are having to make about keeping the lights on and putting food on the table, or helping somebody to actually be able to not be incarcerated until they have a trial. So maybe Senator Cotton actually needs to go spend some time with some real people and stop dealing with this from a political lens and deal with it from a humanity lens.
But that is not what they are going to do. All right, folks, back to that Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shootings.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.